Everyone here, I think, has before lunch been talked to a lot today, so maybe we'll just talk a little bit about what we're doing, and maybe we can get some of them to give us some feedback about, what their mindset is around some of this in terms of, I think, one of the messages you've given me, and I've written this down because I can't remember anything anymore, I'm getting old, is to address the largest manufacturing opportunities today requires finding new ways to leverage multiple product platforms, data sources, and software tools. This requires close collaboration across multiple teams to maximize the value of data for our operational stakeholders.
Did I say that? Oh. I don't remember saying that, but I'm sure I did. So I don't even know what that means because it's a lot of words. It's a lot of words, but I'll tell you this. I think I'm the anti-digital guy, if that makes sense. Like the more time we can spend talking about what we're trying to accomplish and put it in the context of the people whose ideas we're trying to fundamentally change, the operational leadership team and all the people in the plants and define how we run our operations, the more time you just keep talking about what we're trying to accomplish versus taking the shortcut to technology, the better off you're all going to be. So I defer talking about the widgets and what's-its and the technology and the data layer until I get everybody aligned and they start to ask, hey, how would I do this? Well, you're going to need some other things, and we know how to do that. That's actually the easy part, right? I mean, it's a lot of work, and this is all great stuff, but I just wanted to be the anti-digital guy for a second to lay into the phrase that Brian captured when I said it some night. But
I have the team's message, by the way.
So
30 days.
you actually have like an audit trail for that?
Yeah.
So my point being basically this, I saw a lot of really good things here this morning about where we're trying to get to, like what the end state looks like, what the vision is, and I was surprised by the level of alignment. I was also at an LNS conference a couple weeks ago, or was it last week? And again, same thing. I started to feel like a really good sense of alignment, and we know what the end state looks like. And then, so you create the compelling event, you create the case for change, and everybody wants it and feels like they need it. And then you go, well, how do we get there? And then you say, well, we'll just go work on all the technology stuff and we'll figure out the middle part. And for those of you who are South Park fans, any South Park fans in here? Okay. If I say Underpants Gnomes business plan, do you know what that means?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you don't know what it is, Google it, Underwear Gnomes business plan, South Park. It's a meme, whatever you say that, how the kids say that. So, but basically they say they want to make some money. So they describe their business plan, they point to underwear, collect underwear, that's step one. Step two is a question mark. So step two is they go, and then step three is profit. Well, so think about that. This morning we talked about, this is where we want to go. We want to enable people, we want to unleash data, we want to make better decisions, we want to empower operators. That was awesome. There was a slide I took a picture of. I'm going to steal most of it because it's better than the one I use. And then we go all the way to technology. And at the end of the day, those two things have to come together at the same time. And organizational change and pace of change is the slowest part. And the technology has to be just a little bit ahead of and ready for the organization. If it gets too far ahead, you start having a negative ROI situation because you're too ready to do things you don't know how to do. It's like buying new golf clubs before you know how to play golf, right? You can spend the money, but you're not going to get the return you expect. You're better off spending money on lessons and wait until you need slightly better clubs. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that's great, Ben. And I think that kind of leads into just the one other thing I'm going to say before we kind of reach out to you all. And this is talking about really the benefit and value of CESMII. And I don't know, what was it, Jonathan, March? We got together, I reached out because there's this thing that we have called the digital manufacturing pipeline. Think like data lake and all those fun things that pulled it all together, right? Ignore the technology, but I'm a customer. I need access to lots of different data. Ben's team has a lot of other folks that need the same thing. And we're struggling. We were challenged, and we were partnering with our IT folks, and we kept going like, this is what we need. And they kept going, hey, guess what? We got, we're going to use Microsoft Synapse. Sorry, Microsoft guys in the room, but and then they start dumping all our time series data in there, and it's like, it doesn't work, right? And then they're like, we got this thing, and again, doesn't work. And I'm like, struggling, I'm talking to Ben, and I'm like, Ben, we're part of CESMII. I go to these meetings. Would it be okay if I brought them in and had them and pulled our partners in our global information systems team together and try to figure out what is it that we really need to think about so that we can find the right technologies to go and do this. And Ben, of course, fortunately said, Brian, that's actually a rare good idea from you.
I think I actually may have said that.
Yeah. And, so I reached out to John and I said, John, we're struggling with him and Steve and Jonathan. And I'm like, we're really struggling with this. Would you guys be open to coming out and partnering with us and helping us walk through how should we think about solving this problem? And so we got this meeting. They all come out. We go to our world headquarters, and we got our IT folks there. And, Jonathan starts talking about knowledge graphs. And Jonathan, what happened immediately after you started talking about knowledge graphs?
Did you start talking about what software you were going to use?
It wasn't me, but what happened, right? Someone from the team immediately jumped into saying, hey, I can do that in this software, and let me start doing it and start, immediately. We're probably 2 hours into the meeting, and he's already starting to build a solution.
Yeah, the gentleman we're talking about went out and just bought the new shiny golf club at that point, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what, and I also said to you before you set the conversation up, or the meeting up was, yeah, that's a great idea, but I got a couple things I want to watch out for. One of them is, how do we keep the team that we're going to talk to, a bunch of nerds, which is all of us in this room, I think, right? I'm a nerd. We like shiny stuff. We like technology. I got an engineering background. But at the end of the day, if we're not careful about the message, we'll get people jumping to conclusions. And that's when people get hurt. They jump to conclusions, sprain an ankle. So ultimately, how do you make sure that they don't overstep and miss sight of where we're going and just jump to a shortcut? So go ahead.
No, I mean, I think this is really good.
For the outcome.
No. So we pull them together, right? We spend, a whole day. Probably the first part of the day was kind of like, you ever see those meetings or those memes where people just beating their head against the desk? That was probably me, because I'm stop jumping to technology. Stop jumping to technology. We need to figure and understand, and Jonathan did a nice job when he was showing his knowledge graph models. We need to understand this, and he spent a lot of time. Actually, there was 2 Johns in the room at the time, so 1 John, 1 Jonathan, and 3 Johns actually. But they spent a lot of time keep pulling them back in, and we did it.
Did I say it's the model dummy?
I think you might.
That's what I thought.
You probably thought that, and honestly, I don't know if any of you experienced this stuff, but this is what was happening. So first half of the day, literally, go at lunch, come back in, let's start having conversations. We start drawing, and you kind of get that thing that really matters. If you ever in a meeting, or or if you're a salesperson or whatever, and you ever hear someone go, you've done something right. Or, I've learned that many times. And you got that moment. And when you got that moment, they started to get it. And all of a sudden, everybody started to come together. And the guy who kept trying to say, I got the technology, kept trying to do it. Everyone kind of go, no, stop. We're not there yet. And that came together. Now, the cool thing was it didn't just end there. Because what happens after you walk out of a meeting? Everything falls back apart and everyone jumps right back to technology. Right, Ben?
Fall right back into the old groove, right? Everybody just goes back to default.
So at this point, I go back to Ben and I said, Ben, do you care if I use a little bit of money if necessary or whatnot, and have the CESMII guys kind of join the meeting, not to tell everyone what to do, but kind of to provide those guide rails around making this thing, making sure they don't fall back in those bad habits. And fortunately, he looked at me and goes, Brian, that's, holy crap, 2 good ideas within a week.
Sometimes he has some moments, but I want to say this. This is what I was, as we were talking about coming up here and trying to explain why there's value in this and why I'm here. I'm here because he sort of tricked me into coming here. It was easier just to come than it was to tell him no. But no, seriously, it's important. And what I want to talk about is, we talk about ecosystem, and we've used the word ecosystem today and yesterday in 2 different ways. One of them is an ecosystem of ideas and collaboration and people with common cause trying to come together to solve some big fundamental problem that's really complicated that we all believe in. And then there's also this ecosystem of stuff. And as I was listening to everybody talk today and yesterday, I was is this more about ecosystem of ideas or ecosystem of widgets and things? And check yourself as we're talking this afternoon when we're talking about ecosystem. The person using it and the context it's being used in, is it more about widgets or is it more about ideas? Because in my opinion, the ecosystem of ideas is 100 or 1,000 times more powerful than the ecosystem of widgets. You need both, but let's just point out the fact and admit there's two kinds of ecosystems. And the ideas piece is exactly why I told Brian it was a good idea, because having Jonathan in the meetings provides those guardrails, but he's not doing it because of your technological brilliance, actually, Jonathan. What you're doing is you're providing that thought, that community of thought that's representative of all of the others you interact with in this organization. And so when you speak, it means more than just you as a person speaking. You're representing this ecosystem of ideas, and you're also bringing in an ecosystem of widgets for us to use. So,
yeah, no, I think that's the reality of this. And this is the conversation that I want to have with all of you today for a few minutes before lunch, because I know you're all starving. But how are you using this ecosystem? How are you going to leverage this? Because I know how I leverage it. And Ben knows how we leverage it, because we put a lot of value on external perspective, on that ecosystem of partners, analysts, and more importantly, all of you, right? So how are you guys doing it? Anyone want to chime in? Anyone want to jump in? Come on. Y'all been sitting here not saying a word for 4 hours. How are you guys leveraging your ecosystem? Come on, somebody.
your system of ideas. My microphone's, Brian turned it off on me. Yeah, to be specific, how are any of you leveraging an ecosystem of ideas and thought in terms of what you're doing? Like, any good examples of how you're leveraging other organizations who are working on similar things? Is anybody thinking about it that way? Anybody?
I mean, you're here today, right? Run over here, because like we want to hear you, and I don't mind running.
Just a simple comment. I'm in business development, and my job is to lead manufacturers into smart manufacturing. I'm new to CESMII, and I think it's actually very amazing. I'm so impressed and so enthused about what's happening here. But what I see in talking to my customers is that they have so many software packages. And I witnessed the challenge of bringing data sources together. And this is what they need. And so, you know, what I'm going back with is to communicate to the partners that I work with how important this is to expedite and accelerate everybody getting to that, right? Supply chain resilience and the table of ideas. And I do the same thing that Ben does. I refuse to talk about products. I go into customers and I ask them, tell me what you're doing. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your challenges. What ideas do you have? Can we create a vision of how we can move forward together? And then how do we break it down from there? So, thanks.
That's great. That's great. Tony, we have the T-shirt. We have the tour. What is it? You know, you've been going around. You spend a lot of time on the road. What is it that you know, around when we think about this ecosystem and tying into what we do? What do you think?
Yeah, so again, Coke is a pretty large organization, very diverse. So we have a knowledge network concept where it starts at a high level with a community of practice for strategy. And then under that, there's communities of practice for specific capabilities that we're trying to stand up. And then we have republics of science that are more technical in nature. It could be architecture, it could be a new emerging tech. And all of that pyramid, if you will, are internal and external SMEs. At any given time, you might have a few thousand people engaged in these activities. And that's our means and mechanism to introduce new vendors, introduce new concepts via that knowledge network versus folks having to go into the plants or into specific operating companies. We can learn together faster, better, and we'll pull in various SMEs. And when I come to an event like this, I present back out to those communities of practice where it's most relevant.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. You know, Ben, so I want to jump back into, did this thing just die? I want to jump back into our little story just to end it up so we can all go to lunch real quick here. But Ben, you know, we did all this work with CESMII. We leveraged our external ideas. What happened in the last meeting you had with this DMP team?
Yeah, so the team that's trying to solve the technical bit of the requirements that are defined by what manufacturing needs, they've been struggling and they've been going in circles, but it's a progressive circles. It's like making a little bit of progress. So the last conversation, they came to me and a couple other folks who were on the steering committee, because we do everything by committee and council, because it's really efficient and effective as an organization. Really leads for agility and decision making and risk taking. So they presented out the slides that I'm pretty sure we gave them 4 years ago and said, we want you to go build this for us. And then we spent 4 years, or at least 3 years, kind of just grinding through every little aspect, and everybody questioning the why and no one having a connection to the idea or the outcome. And finally, they presented it yesterday, or it was Monday, and I saw it and I go, funding approved, go. And it was their idea. And they completely understood it, and they were connected with the message. And that's what I mean about the technology needing to keep pace with where you're at as an organization. You can only teach your organization or an individual person or a group or a functional capability how to go one step further, right? You can't teach a 3-year-old how to throw a split seam fastball, right? You're skipping some steps, right? There's a lot of things you have to do to get to the level where you understand what the next step is. And the good news is, since we're nowhere near the cutting edge of what's possible, we have a clear lane of technology that will be ready when we are. And the key is getting the organization to be ready to accept it and pull it and want it and understand why. So I told them to end the meeting early. I was like, just go, just spend the money, go, approved. What took you so long? Wow, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I love the way you're thinking about this. And I literally, you and I probably drew it on a whiteboard 4 years ago, the same thing. Same exact picture, same shape, same words, but it took us 4 years to get everybody to think the same way and want to do it and believe in it. So anyway.
So we're going to let you all go here, but I want to say one thing. Thank you to the CESMII team, because you helped us get to that point. Before we go, I want to give you just a couple of things to take away, right? One thing, remember cross-industry learning. Take that as a takeaway. Look at these different industries. Don't just look at people within your industry. Look across, because you're going to find new ways of doing something. You're going to get out of that kind of groupthink mentality, right? I need glasses. I need the other type of glasses to read this stuff anymore. But the other one is, make sure you're really asking your team, are you getting a diversity of thought and perspective? You're here today, so hopefully you are, but ask them the same thing. Think about, how do you avoid those echo chambers? Right? And groupthink. How do you avoid that? How do you get out? And how do you leverage these type of events or, the industry organizations to help you to get out of those echo chambers and find the better ways of getting things done? And sometimes you'll actually end up where you were, but think about doing that, right? And then, at the end of the day, think about how you're going to build resilience, right? Because doing this stuff is going to make you more resilient. It's also going to be an accelerator for you, because one of the things I always ask people, or even when I present, is I talk about the struggles we had. We just did today, talked about the struggles, where we failed, where we hit roadblocks. Hopefully you all can learn from that if you haven't gone down this journey and you're trying to build out these smart, the knowledge graphs, the knowledge information pipelines. Hopefully you're going to go and learn from us so you don't hit the same pitfalls that we did, and then you're going to go faster and get to value faster. So with that, I think I'm done. You good? You hungry?
I've been done for a couple minutes.
Good. We're done. So let's go eat some lunch. Simon has to say something, then you can go eat lunch.
I just want to thank both of you for probably the most human presentation I've sat in on in a while, and I wish you played the Pink Panther theme, just thinking about products.
We don't have clearance for that. There's a lot of paperwork involved.
No kidding. But while we discuss paperwork and copyright, I believe lunch is out there.